Hi, this is Anthony Parent of IRS Medic. And folks, I got to tell you something. You know, we all kind of go around, we talk about this, about getting justice out of our government. But the fact is, our government has always been our enemy. And it has never been more clear in a recent case that has come out from the Supreme Court denying review of a certain case. And I just want to read a few facts to you guys. I'm going to share my screen and show you this, what I have. This is something else here. In the 1930s, Monica Toth's father fled his home in Germany to escape the swell of violent anti-Semitism. Eventually, he found his way to South America, where he made a new life with his young family and went on to enjoy a successful business career in Buenos Aires. But perhaps owing to his early formative experiences, Ms. Toth's father always kept a reserve of funds in a Swiss bank account. Shortly before his death, he gave Ms. Toth several $1 million, also in a Swiss bank account. He encouraged his daughter to keep the money there, just in case. Ms. Toth, now in her 80s as an American citizen, followed her father's advice. For several years, however, she failed to report her foreign bank account to the federal government as the law requires, 31 U.S.C. 5314. Ms. Toth insists that this was an innocent mistake. She says she did not know of the reporting obligation. And when she learned of it, she says she completed the necessary disclosures. The Internal Revenue Service saw things differently. Pursuant to Section 5321, the agent charged Ms. Toth with willfully violating Section 5314's reporting requirement and assessed a civil penalty of $2.1 million, half of the balance of Ms. Toth's account, plus another $1 million in late fees and interest. John, I have a question for you here.
You?
Wouldn't you say that sounds like a cruel and unusual punishment to you? Don't you think that violates the Eighth Amendment?
Well, Anthony, the particular clause that was the subject of the case that we're talking about is the excessive fines clause. That was the issue. But yeah, I think it's cruel and unusual independently. But that aside, it's not the legal issue here. The legal issue is whether it violated the excessive fines clause of the Eighth Amendment. And of course, what we know, on Monday, the Supreme Court declined to hear what's called the cert petition, which was the invitation for the court to consider, take on the case to issue a ruling on that issue, right? You know, whether it violated the excessive fine clause. But interestingly and significantly, Justice Neil Gorsuch did not agree. Okay. He dissented from that. And as part of his dissent, he wrote actually a very, very interesting, short but interesting ruling on or decision on his own. And incidentally, what you were just reading from was his language. It was his description of the facts. And I think that's very important for our discussion. I would add that Justice Gorsuch's dissent, the written dissent, actually ends with, if you want to go back up to it for a second, keep going back up, perspective one. Okay, whoa, where is it? Oh, I didn't include it. But where it ends with is Justice Gorsuch, I think, actually openly inviting the lower courts to address the issue. Which, you know, I think is interesting. I think it's courageous. I think it's absolutely correct. And I think that this decision is, you know, clear evidence that the government is, you know, absolutely out, perhaps irretrievably out of control.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's kind of always been, if we actually look at our history a little bit. And I think the mythology and that sort of the thing is, you know, as we talk about, we get outraged, we have an expectation that we live in a land of freedom or something. But the fact is, you know, this government has always been, you know, finding certain people to drop everything on and, you know, ruin it. It's just sort of the thing. Here's my problem with Mr. Gorsuch, though. Brilliant guy, but this tells me he actually doesn't understand the issue, really, and that he's not going deep enough, and it's not really giving me the hope and promise for the Bittner decision. And John, it has to do with some analysis that you and I've done, and Keith has joined us, Keith Redman on the call as well. Keith has joined us on this issue as well in a previous podcast. And I'm going to highlight it right here. Okay, it's 31 USC 5314. Okay, And this is the quote that Justice Gorsuch says. Ms. Toth, now in her 80s and American citizen, followed her father's advice. For several years, however, she failed to report her foreign bank account
It
to the
is a
federal
misstatement
government.
of the law.
Yes, that's not the law. That's not what the law says. That's not at all what it is. 31 USC does not say anywhere there is a requirement to file a yearly foreign bank account. If you look at the law, there would be no indication that the law would actually require that. And I'll go to and I'll quickly go to that. I don't want to belabor the issue. You could check out the podcast we've done about that. But here we go, right here. This is the statute, and try to tell me where they say a bank account, yearly bank account. And actually, and I'll get you. This is what it comes down to. At no point do they say bank account, and actually, the law defines a foreign bank account as something other than what this law requires here.
Anthony, you know what? Anthony, you're doing far too much thinking here. Okay.
Oh, I know. All right. Yeah. Right.
Tone it down to my level for a minute here. Okay.
Okay.
You look at the statute, the real point is the statute doesn't impose any obligation on any individual whatsoever. The only
right, that too. Yeah,
obligation on the Secretary of the Treasury. So yeah, I'm sure you're right in everything else you're saying, but why get into it at all?
Right.
The point is that there's no possibility that statute can be applied to an individual. But like everybody else, he misstates the law. But listen, his heart and reasoning is clearly in the right place.
Correct, but it's sort of very unsettling when it's like, I guess I have hopes for him that someone, hey, by the way, take a look. I have hopes that he's watching this channel, or one of his clerks is.
Of course, he's watching. Everybody doesn't everybody watch the channel, Anthony?
I hope so. Yeah, we had at least. Yeah, we're getting hundreds of views.
500 views.
Well, I mean, we have a great audience. That's what's wonderful about it. And we have some of the smartest people on here with just some of the best comments. It's just an honor it's honestly an honor to host this podcast.
Well, it's a lot of fun. I think it's an important thing that we're doing here. But yeah, you're right. I mean, let's accept that, he along with 99% of humanity misstates the law on that. But leaving that aside, I mean, what the law does do is authorize the Treasury Secretary to require the form which wasn't filed. Okay, so we get there at the end of the day. Okay, just not through that statute specifically. But okay. Now, when I read his description of this, well, I mean, this is why I excerpted it exactly, so nobody could accuse me of making it up. I mean, that really, that looks really pretty awful, doesn't it? I mean, in the sense of what the government is doing. And if you'll permit me to add something here, actually go down to perspective 2.
Okay, yep.
Now, which I think was what I added. Yeah, absolutely. Now, if we go to this paragraph, the penalty imposed on Ms. Toth, what's even worse here is that, I mean, let's assume that, all right, we're dealing with a law that allows the imposition of the 50% civil willful FBAR penalty, willful. Now, there have been a series of cases, that have made it very, very clear the issue of willfulness is a question of fact. Now, what that means, if it's a question of fact, that there must be a factual determination of whether it was willful. Now, what was interesting about the Toth case, and which I find particularly troubling, is that there was never an actual sort of trial or determination of factual willfulness. Rather, what happened was that Ms. Toth was trying to be her own lawyer in the court or something like that and didn't understand the rules. And as a result, the court got frustrated and sanctioned her, issued a court sanction for not complying in the rules. And amazingly, the sanction was a finding of willfulness, if you can imagine, right? Yeah, this is what's going on here. So the sanction was you lose the case effectively, right? I mean, it was, they might as well have taken a gun and blown her brains out. So the question I have on this is, I don't believe that there is a finding of willfulness here within the meaning of what willfulness is in the FBAR statute. No. It's fake willfulness, right? And we talked about fake income before. Now we have the new doctrine in U.S. FBAR law called fake willfulness, right? Where a judge says, no, we're not going to decide whether there's willfulness or not. This person's, not comply with the rules of the court. we're allowed to sanction the person, I think we'll just sanction them with a finding of willfulness. All right, I'm not kidding. All right, and this is no exaggeration. So we have this thing, and this goes through the appeal courts, and so the whole bit, the reason for, I mean, frankly, I think they should have tried to, I'm not an expert on this, but it seems to me they should have tried to get the thing before the Supreme Court, if possible. Maybe it's not possible, it probably isn't, on the basis that there was no finding of willfulness, right? Because there was no finding of
willfulness.
But still, it gets worse in my view.
You have no factual basis to find willfulness.
There was
none. You didn't.
The courts, it's very clear, Anthony. This is a question of fact. Questions of fact need to be determined, by the courts, not through, some sort of court
judicial notice or, well, you're a jerk. So
absolutely, but this is what happened here. Then the next point that I think of is this, that, I really believe that I think at the end of the day, I'm going to go to a Clinton speech, many years ago, which I always remember just because of the use of the language. And he was talking about the United States, and he said, people have always been much more impressed with the power of our example than with the example of our power. Right? In other words, what this is about is the projection of moral authority, not laws and legal authority. Now, we look at what the IRS did here, which is, I really think, I understand the difficulties that they have in that, but this really is appalling, right? Because, what they're doing is, I think it's bad enough, trying to hit up an 82-year-old woman for $2 million on an undeclared account. And the money that funded it came from Argentina and was never subject to U.S. tax anyway. But the point is that they ran with this thing, and I presume continue to run with this thing without a finding of willfulness as a fact, right? They're just using the sort of fake willfulness, thing coming out of this court. So, this is really, really, I think, pretty bad. I don't know. What do you think?
Pretty bad. So I want to ask Keith a couple questions on this here.
Sure.
Keith, here we go. All right.
Okay.
So, Keith, you help people all around the world, living around the world. And one of the things that people around the world believe is like, well, look, here's the thing. As long as I'm living overseas here, that I'm sort of outside the long arm of the law of the IRS, and I shouldn't have to worry too much about these things. Does anything about this change your mind at all?
I don't know. And that's an honest answer.
Okay.
I think of some, examples of, and I always use France as an example for obvious reasons, but it could be any country. But, you have an American living in France all of his life, okay, not living in the United States, or maybe lived in the United States when they were a kid, and they lived their permanent life in France, and they have bank accounts, investment accounts in France, and they've never been in the U.S. tax system. What are they supposed to do? Because they've never filed FBARs. They've not done anything like that. And I do know, because I've actually met with the French tax authorities personally, and they have said that they will not do the bidding of the IRS if the individual is French in France, as well as if they are a legal resident in France. So with that information, what is the individual supposed to think or believe? And what logical next steps should they take? You see what I mean?
Yeah, so well, actually, and I think that's exactly leading up to where I would say my advice would be here is that don't assume you're safe in whatever country you are. And this is actually a constant, if you ever have that nightmare where you're trying to warn something and nothing is coming out of your mouth, you're saying things and it doesn't happen. That's basically me for the past 10 years. And I'll tell people, I'm like, well, look, here's the thing. You've paid all the taxes you owe. There's no way you're avoiding taxes for things like this. Could you please do me a favor? Could you please do me a favor and talk to an asset protection attorney? Okay? talk to someone in your state and get your assets in a trust, because there's no fraudulent conveyance, because any FBAR penalties are not, there's no lien against them like taxes. If you try to get rid of your money, hey, look, I don't want to pay taxes, and so I'm going to take my money, I'm going to put it in a trust. The IRS can go through that because of the way the law is. But when it comes to the FBAR fines, there's no secret lien that attaches. And so, look, if you're going through this and there's no judgment, will you talk? Please put your assets into something that would be not accessible by the IRS.
Are you talking about for an American overseas who has
yes.
nothing in the United States?
Anyone, anywhere, no matter what.
Yeah.
If you have something in a bank account that's a target, understand it's a target. You are the juiciest target. Look, this is the thing. We know this. They love to go after the elderly, and it's that amount, and the penalty amount that I keep seeing is somewhere between $1 and $4 million. These bank accounts, it's like there's a total MO they have. Total MO of who they are looking for to hit with the most. And so please, folks, do yourself a favor and talk to someone about protecting your assets. How much proof do you need?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Government's gone. How much proof do you need? There's nothing more we could do to say this is insane.
Yeah, that's a good point that you just raised about as far as protecting your assets. May I be devil's advocate for a second?
Absolutely.
Okay, so how does and this is an honest question, how does the IRS go after somebody they don't even have any record of? See what I mean?
Right. Well, I mean, that's getting down to, but again, why are we going to assume we're safe? Stop that to say, well, I have a technicality, I'm going to be okay, that someone else has to worry about it. Stop that. No, that's not true. You're like, well, I'm protected, I'm fine. Well, what's to stop you from taking the ultimate protection, right? Like, you know what? Just in case something changes, somebody says something bad about me, I don't know, all these twists and turns. Ms. Toth certainly didn't expect this to happen, but here she is. And so that is the thing I'm like, will you please get this into a trust that can't be accessed by the IRS? Will you please?
You're talking about money in a trust, a significant amount of money, obviously.
Right. When you're like, right, well, transfer the money into a trust. So if things go bad, the IRS can say, you could say, oh, well, IRS, too bad. Because again, and really, all they're really concerned about is that press release. Collecting this money is not really a matter, because they're trying to, I think what John said, it's like this moral crusade they have, right? And that's sort of the most dangerous thing about it, the morality. So that's really my takeaway. That's the thing I think is the biggest message is what more evidence do we need that this government is completely out of control, lost its moorings. The best judge doesn't quite see the law the way it was written, and everyone else doesn't care. So that's the truth. And
would you also suggest that for Americans who have renounced and who have never have filed or done an FBAR? Would you suggest that as well? That they should also do that protection and put their money in a trust? Well,
I think that is where, I think that's where it's headed. That, and John and I are talking about, or we're all talking about how, the IRS's next move to go after someone is probably someone who didn't file the correct expatriation paperwork at the 8858. And then they'll probably go after them that way. And who knows if it's really filed miscorrectly. I mean, look, the IRS loses stuff all the time. And you're like, oh, you didn't file it. And, they'll just say that. Well, how do you prove, that you did? Hopefully you have your mailing still. But, so who knows? And so I would say, this is the thing. If you're a U.S. person, you have a foreign bank account that has over $1 million in it. Okay, that's a magical number for the IRS, because that's the press release number. You are under risk. And I would absolutely say, you know what can I do to protect this, just in case I'm the one in the sights, because they're pointing that gun and they're just looking up close enough and fire away.
And I guess a trust would be, and I'm asking very basic questions because you get people listening to our cast that don't know lawyer talk or anything like this. Mm-hmm. I guess that would even be better to put it in a trust than giving I don't know the right term, but giving the money to the non-American spouse, for example. That's
Sometimes that works, and we've done that. Sometimes
yeah.
that works, but that's okay too. That's actually, your exemptions that you can't give away all of it, but you can give
Right.
away 5 million yeah, that's actually a pretty good strategy too. Just so it's not even, that's very difficult now. And that's a good protection.
Okay.
But that, again, you have to have a, position where, you get along and you're okay with that.
So, right. Exactly.
That's can be a bit of an ask. So anyway, I want to,
John,
I want to ask you your final, I want to close out here and meet our time commitment for the day. John, I want to finish with you. What would you like to wrap this up with?
Well, I think that I'd like to answer Keith's question briefly. And
Okay.
Sure. Please.
You're asking what's the best protection for Americans abroad. It's the one thing they won't do, which is band together to force the end of citizenship taxation.
Yeah. Bingo. That's it. That's the bottom line.
Problems in. But will Americans abroad do it? No. They'd much rather, have to play this guessing game forever, and
well, I think they'd much rather focus on homeland American issues than their own issues.
It's all part of it. Yeah, Keith, you're right. You're right too. Keith, you're right about that too.
The community of Americans abroad, right?
Well, and I think
that's the problem here.
Well, I think, and to wrap it up with that, I think that's absolutely, for as awesome as this content is, okay, we should be getting a lot more views. No offense. So the people watching this, don't you see, like you have a bunch of blind people saying things are all right. You see how out to lunch they are? Oh, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. And yet here you are concerned because you're honestly a little bit smarter than them. So that is the thing. You are on your own to protect yourself. There is no one in this world whose job it is to protect you other than you. Well, I guess we want to help too, to be honest. So with that, now we are going to tackle in our next episode. We're going to tackle what are we tackling next, John? In our next episode,
we are tackling Notice 2023-11. More great news.
Wow, that sounds like a lot of fun. So 23. So I'm sure it's a little bit of a mess there, huh? As the IRS is laying the groundwork to.
All roads lead to renunciation.
There you go. Thank you so much, Keith Redman, John Richardson. Everyone, please subscribe, and I want you all to. I want to thank you all for watching, and please comment. I'm getting much better on responding to comments now, so I will likely respond to you. So again, Anthony Perrin, IRS Medic. Thanks for watching.